This is the China Hollywood Greenlight podcast, episode number 46.
And rolling sound, quiet.
Here we go. Ready.
Speeding. 120, take 7.
And action.
This is Caryn McCann, the host of the China Hollywood Greenlight podcast, a podcast about creating and distributing content for both Hollywood and China. If you like the show, please subscribe and leave a rating so other people can find this podcast. The more the community grows, the more opportunities will be out there for everyone. Any links mentioned in the podcast can be found in the show notes at the China List, which is where Hollywood and China meet, which is at https://chnlist.com/podcast-blog. And look for this episode, which is number 46. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to start out with a motivational quote to encourage our listeners to continue on their path to achieving their own green light. And today's quote is from American author Seth Godin, who put it simply and succinctly when he said, "Remarkable is a choice." A quick update on what I'm working on. My big project is I'm now expanding the China List. The China List, as you know, is our membership website to connect writers and producers in Hollywood and China. Soon we will change the name from the China List to the Asia List. So besides China and Hollywood, writers and producers from hot markets like South Korea, Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, India, etc. will be able to connect. Stay tuned for our grand opening announcement. Also, I have several production companies reading 2 of my scripts, so hopefully I will have some good news for you soon. And now, here is the main segment. Today's guest is Douglas Montgomery. Douglas founded Global Connects in 2021 and serves as its CEO. He has been quoted in both Bloomberg and Nikkei, in which he shared his thoughts on international content potential in the United States. Montgomery is featured in the 2021 Global TV Demand Awards, speaking with the Most In-Demand TV Show winner, Attack on Titan. Douglas will speak at the 2022 NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, conference on the topic of foreign content's ascendance in the United States and the world. A 20-year veteran of the media and retail space, Douglas spent more than 16 years with Warner Brothers, most recently as Vice President of Category Management. Douglas is Chairman Emeritus of the 113-year-old Japan American Society of Southern California, a 501c3, a nonprofit, building and maintaining relationships between the U.S. and Japan. He is also the founder and executive producer of Global Stage Hollywood, a 3-day film festival in Hollywood celebrating diverse artists from around the world. Douglas holds an MBA in international business from the University of Southern California. Prior to USC, Douglas completed a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Canada. He resides in Torrance, California with his wife and son. So, Douglas, thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, I told the audience a little bit about you, but why don't you take a minute and tell us more about yourself personally and your business?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, Caryn, thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I appreciate it. You mentioned the topic that I'll be speaking at Las Vegas at the NAB show, foreign content's ascendancy in the U.S. and around the world. That topic is kind of my working life, my working life's work. In 1991, when I finished my bachelor's, I actually moved to Japan, which kind of was the China of its day because it was the economy was booming, and it was actually at the end of the day, it was probably right at the end of the bubble, but it was very interesting to go to Asia at the time because, again, it was, Japan was kind of the first country that really challenged the West as far as, economic success goes. Second of all, what was really interesting about it in retrospect is there was no internet. So living in, it's a big deal, actually.
Yeah.
Living in Japan in 1991, it was a $5 a minute phone call home. So that happened, once a month.
Oh boy.
And then, number 2, it was, taking the train to Osaka Station and going to the bookstore and reading a 2-week-old USA Today to find out what was going on. But it's, quite frankly, to have that experience is actually rather special because you can't have it now because, everywhere you go, everybody's got unlimited data, every corner of the planet. So you can see everything all at the same time.
Right.
Which, to kind of bear the lead is why it is, one of the reasons why, foreign content is doing quite well around the world and growing because it's so easy. 30 years ago, like I mentioned, the world was much smaller before the internet. And, you had these gatekeepers who kind of controlled everything. And, if the gatekeeper didn't like it or the gatekeeper didn't think it would sell, it wasn't given the opportunity. That has changed. So that's,
yes,
like I said, I'm kind of, making bookends on my life, my working life. But anyway, so that's, kind of where I started. So I've lived in Asia probably half of my working life, most of it in Japan.
Wow.
I did work for Warner Brothers in Japan as well, and was in charge of a certain piece of their business in Asia, which included China and Singapore and Hong Kong and all that stuff. But anyway, so what I'm doing now in the kind of the back half of my career is, trying to bring all the different pieces together. And I've created what I call a media lab, where I try to help, kind of bridge Hollywood and the world, again, because of my Rolodex, mainly Asia, but also does include some other pieces of entertainment.
Wow. Well, let's start with the basics. Now, why did you at first want to enter the Asian market?
I first went to the Asian market. This is not a very good reason, but quite frankly, I was a little curious, not a whole lot curious. And I just thought, why not? Let's just give it a shot. I had, I grew up in Canada, as you mentioned. Honestly speaking, I probably had fish twice and rice once in my first 21 years. You're laughing, but it's way closer to the truth than it should be. But I just thought a friend of mine had gone to Japan the year before on a scholarship, and he's like, "Hey, man, come check it out. You can teach English and make $100 an hour."
Whoa!
To a 20-year-old in 1991, that's a lot of money, right? So I thought, basically, why not?
Well, good for you. You have a sense of adventure. Now, this next question, I kind of you really bridged the East and the West, and there's so many things I did not even mention. Like, for example, keynote speaker at the U.S. Asia Entertainment Summit, the curator of the Taiwan Biennial Film Festival, plus all your work with the Japan American Society, Warner Brothers. That's a lot. What are 2 or 3 main tasks you do on a quote typical day?
Well, one main task on a typical day, if you're dealing with Asia, is block off the witching hour of 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay.
Which again with a wife and a 14-year-old child is kind of tricky, right? Because there's a lot going on domestically between 5 and 9. Swimming lessons and school pickup. So that's a struggle Sunday to Thursday that anybody else who does this business understands.
Exactly.
So, that's one thing that I have to manage. But then too, and again, I've done a lot of remote work. I work for myself now. It's not such a big deal. But even when I work for big companies, I probably spent over half of it working in Asia, reporting to an office overseas. So you have to manage time zones. There's good and bad on that. I just mentioned the bad, but the good is, it's not like you're playing catch ball all day long. So you kind of chain to your desk. Like,
right.
If we back up a little bit, the very first business job I had was started in 1995. The internet was around, but it wasn't being used. But business with Asia was done in our company by fax, right?
Right.
So I get to work at 7:30 in the morning, read the faxes, and then work on answering the questions, in order to send the fax back, later that night, right? So you kind of had the whole day to answer a question. I mean, now, so in the internet world, when you're in the same time zone as clients, everybody expects everything immediately. But if you're dealing with clients and things in a different time zone, you kind of have that back. So, I have a rough deadline in my mind around 3 or 4 that I, really need to start getting back to clients so they can have the email sitting in their inbox, first thing in their morning. But it kind of gives me the freedom of the day, right, to do what I want, as long as I, meet that 3 or 4 p.m. deadline.
Right. But then your evenings, that block of time, that golden hour, as you say, is you got to be available, I guess. That's the challenge with being connected to your phone or your internet, whatever. You have to be, not have to, but you can be reachable at
Yeah.
strange hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned earlier the thing that we did with Parrot Analytics and Attack on Titan. There was 3 of us on the U.S. side that were on the call. Me, my wife, who did the helped out with some of the translation, and the producer from Parrot. Well, the director was only available at 2 a.m. Pacific time. So, we all got up at 1:45, sucked back a coffee, and got on the phone with a gravelly voice. So, it's part and parcel of this global world, I think.
Exactly. No, I can relate. I have guests from all over the world, including obviously China. So I have time slots in my schedule where it's late at night for me, but not early, but mid-morning for them. But yes, yeah, I get it. Now you just mentioned business partners. For example, this producer in Paris. You've got a lot of an Asian background, the Hollywood experience. How do you find your business partners? And the follow-up to this is, how do you suggest the listeners find perhaps a foreign producer?
Well, my company is called Global Connects Media. And the name Global Connects is actually what it is. So, I'm from Canada. I've lived in the US 2 or 3 separate times. I've been in and out of Asia 3 times. I've also lived in Europe. So I have been all over the world, over a number of years on business. So I do have, a global Rolodex. And, I guess maybe it's my nature or kind of the nature of the job I had previously is, meeting clients. I was always, customer facing. So I know a lot of people and I'm also curious. So I always, even when I met people, I always kind of, put them in a box or, okay, this person's interesting about this or that company's interesting about that. And it just kind of rests in my mind. And then when I decided to make my own business, kind of putting 2 together and creating a win-win is, really what I want to do. And that's actually what I'm doing. So, I know a company in Japan who I'm pretty sure they're going to need help with this. And the person that I know who lives in, New York could probably help. Can I put them together and, create a win-win? I can tell you that's fine, but you also need to figure out, as a middleman, what is your value, right?
Right.
Because you're not paying the bills, just introducing 2 people and saying, enjoy, right? So,
right.
The 3 parties need to bring value to the table. And, that's not always easy. But as far as getting clients, I just know a lot of people on both sides. An example, before I worked for Warner Brothers, I worked for Walmart. And why did Warner Brothers hire me? Well, Warner Brothers hired me because I worked for their biggest customer at the time, which was buying billions of dollars of DVD. So I know both sides of the table. And if you're going to bring 2 groups together and, one's a buyer, one's a seller, if you have worked on both sides, I think you have a greater appreciation of, their needs. And, again, I think that helps me create a win-win.
You also have a very unique take on this because not only do you have the film entertainment experience, but you've got the retail experience.
Yes.
So you can bridge that gap because there's a lot of, in fact, I just had a guest the other day who was saying he's so creative. And one of the things he wishes he had done earlier is be more on the business side because it's all about the marketing. It's all about commerce. But you've got that great thing going. But how would you recommend, like, for example, a guest find, let's say an overseas producer, listeners find an overseas producer?
Well, to find an overseas producer, I mean, there are, there's always people looking for projects and, content and that kind of thing. I mean, there's also, quite frankly, a range of, producers, right? So, who wouldn't want to be put in touch with Steven Spielberg, right? I mean,
yeah,
right? That's a little tricky.
Yeah.
Now, you move kind of down the totem pole, it gets easier and easier and easier. One thing that, it's fairly traditional, but it does work. I can say the big one, networking. Okay, that's great. Everybody knows networking, but how and where? Film festivals. COVID is ending here in the U.S., and I was at an event yesterday, the NFT conference here in LA. You mentioned earlier the film festival we did for Taiwan. last fall, and that was actually kind of in a bit of a window of COVID. But there's two phrases I'm going to use. One is show business. The second is film festival. When you talk about show business, both parts are important, right? The show, the content, and the business, because the business is what makes it sustainable. So I think you need to have an appreciation of both sides. A lot of people would argue it's a right side, left side brain thing, so it's a very difficult mix. That's fine. But as far as like finding producers and things, if you're a content creator, film festivals, conferences. I mean, there's nothing better, right? Particularly if you're starting out, you actually really have no other options. You can put up your trailers and all that kind of stuff in Film Freeway and hope to get picked, and it does happen. But networking is also quite good. But where you network, I think, is important. And again, depending on your own level and your own interest, you can go to Sundance and be amongst the 50,000 people trying to get a seat at the table beside Ted Sarandos with his checkbook.
Yeah.
Good luck. Maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you won't. But there's a whole range and of levels of festivals, and you can start working your way up. We did a film festival for Japan a couple of years ago, and we had a gentleman, he's Swiss, and he made a movie about a Japanese guy, a Japanese trumpet player in New York. We picked his movie. It actually won our festival. But he has been working the festival circuit, and actually he's moving up. I've known him now for almost 2 years, but you can see his trajectory. It's moving up, right? Like he first got it in this festival and that festival, and they were a little, not quite as big or as famous. I don't want to say anything's good or bad, but let's just say big or famous.
Right.
But, one little success here leads to a little bigger success there, leads to a little bigger success there. And, he's working his way up. And, there's nothing, I think, magical about that. But at the same time, that's, quite frankly, one big way how you do it, right?
Is he taking a finished film to these festivals, or is he just networking at these festivals?
He is taking finished films to these festivals. That's one. So how did he got, in this particular case, he did get some money from the Swiss government to make it, but how did he get to, let's say, level 2? Well, he started at level 1. What's level 1? Well, level 1 is like, a lot of people, it's a student film, with money you made, collecting bottles, right? And taking to the bottle depot. But I mean, it's true, right? We had a meeting at Warner a couple of years ago, and the guy leading theatrical was talking about how Warner was creating, some kind of a film contest for, people 18 to 25. And, Warner put a little bit of money in it, not a lot, but he said, why are we doing this? Well, he said, well, let's look at Chris Nolan. How does Chris Nolan become Chris Nolan? Well, you have to work backwards.
Right.
Why does Chris Nolan get to direct The Dark Knight? Because he did a good job on Memento. Why does he get to do Memento? Because he did a good job on a commercial. Why did he get to do this commercial? Because he did a good job on a student film. Why did he get money in the student film? Because the school gave him $50,000 because they liked the thing he made personally with his own money.
Right.
I mean, unless you're a victim or a victor of nepotism, this is how it works, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
It's a very long answer to your question, but
no, it's good.
It's probably 80% of the way that this is going to happen. Yeah,
well, hopefully, I really hope that we can do more face-to-face film festivals, film markets, conferences, seminars. It is challenging doing these online webinars. In fact, the one thing I was attending a recent online film market, and you couldn't communicate as an audience. They had all these seminars, but the audience couldn't. The AFM is very good. I love the AFM. You can, hopefully COVID aside, we can do face-to-face in the future. But at the AFM, what I liked about that market online was at least they had a page where attendees could network. And you pop into this, it looks like a building. It's got different floors, and you could pop on these tables, and each floor is different topics. Like here, one floor is directors, one floor is animation, et cetera, et cetera. And that was really helpful in this day of COVID. So the last film market I attended online, they didn't have that. And there was no way on the webinar to send a message to another attendee. So anyway, I digress. But yeah, that's an obstacle that that I encountered dealing with film markets. So I hope, as you just mentioned earlier, that we can do more of these in-person events. So if you could magically solve two current problems, what would they be?
Oh, so I get to define the problem and the answer, right?
Yeah.
I think, the first one I'll go at is when we were kind of talking about yesterday at this NFT thing. And, not to go into too much detail about NFTs, I don't know a whole lot about it, but this democratized Web 3.0 world where all of us are creators, right? So we have 7 billion creators on the earth. Hey, that's great. We all like to be creative, but who's going to watch your stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
That's a big problem. So, with that in mind, we've often talked about curation because there's so much content out there, and we all have our Netflix list, and we have our HBO Max list, and we have our whatever list. And I have a list from 10 years ago or not 10 years ago, maybe 4 years ago that I still haven't seen, but who cares, because I got a brand new list, and a lot of the stuff is quite good. But in this new world where content is so ubiquitous, it does actually become harder to find things. Like this paralysis of analysis, I think, is very real. And some of the companies I work with, and we do this research, and they'll say, like, people spend 25 minutes on Netflix trying to find something, and they just give up and watch The Office reruns again. It's very real. I mean, look at the numbers that come out from these services. I mean, it's Friends over and over and over again. But I think curation is a real issue, and how you bubble to the top is not easy. And I mentioned earlier about how Hollywood was these gatekeepers to the world for entertainment, which was very true. You could argue there's like 6 companies that kind of controlled the entertainment business around the world. But on the other hand, there was a filter there, right? There was some kind of quality filter. Again, working for a movie studio, it's shocking how much crap is made. I mean, like you can go see a Warner movie and say that thing was terrible. Okay, fine. But what you don't see are the 5,000 projects that didn't even make it to the screen. Like shocking. But the world is awash in content. So how you curate that and how you can get that in front of people, it's a real challenge. And then too, with this concept of programmable advertising, or you sign in to Netflix, and you sign in as you, and your wife signs in as her, and allegedly what you see is more tailored to you. Hey, that's great, but how you discover something new, right?
Yes.
So one way you discover something new is Netflix decides that you need something new, and Netflix is making that decision for you, and it's primarily in Netflix's benefit, right?
Right.
We even noticed this a few years ago when Netflix started getting into originals. House of Cards was always sitting, above the fold, right?
Right.
That's not an accident.
Right. Of
right.
Course.
Netflix sees some kind of, momentum behind Squid Game, and they decide to stick it above the fold in front of their 200 million customers around the world. It's probably going to do pretty well. Right.
Right.
So this problem of curation and gatekeeper, it's still there. Actually, I guess you asked me what's the solution. I don't have the solution. Maybe this is a challenge for your listeners if they can find one. They can create a career for themselves, but it's it's a real problem, actually.
Right.
That's one. And then I think the other challenge, and this is again more on the business side as opposed to the show side, is how this cheap content is going to survive at present levels. And in my personal opinion, I'm not the only one. I don't think it will. So Netflix has been slowly jacking up their prices over 5-6 years. Their days as a unicorn fed by cheap Wall Street money. Again, I'm not the only one who thinks this is probably over. So there's likely to be some significant changes coming up. Could be commercials on Netflix, could be an increase in the price. It could be a number of things. But this cheap, easy world of wonderful content. For sure, I think the cheap part is going to be ending.
Right.
Will the wonderful content stay? Yeah, probably. But I think the cheap part's ending.
Well, cheap for consumers, probably
cheap for consumers. Correct.
Yeah, not for
correct.
Netflix. How many billions did I hear they spend on content?
Well, it's I'm not sure what it is at the moment, but the I think Disney's number one at, I think 30 plus billion yearly. I mean, it's outrageous. But yeah, so again, like you said, cheaper consumers. I mean, I think these days are ending, and our precious little eyeballs who haven't been exposed to Dove and Toyota ads,
right?
Those days are ending.
But isn't it also true that, maybe I'm a bad example, but I rarely watch live TV anymore because I don't like commercials.
Nobody does.
So yeah. So I tend to go for streamers, and I pay for this cable package, and I'm like, well, I don't even know what's on it because unless it's sports for my husband, I'm not really watching. But I think that's an issue, and that's another business model that perhaps the networks have to deal with as well, as far as how do we get eyeballs on our shows if people don't like commercials, but how are you going to make money?
So the dream is that, with programmable and targeted ads, they could make just as much money with 6 minutes of ads an hour as they did with 17, because, the ROI for the advertiser would be much higher because they can send you the right ad at the right time and you make a purchase, and you're not stuck watching ads for an F-150 when what you really want to buy is a BMW. My gray-haired opinion of many years is that's all fine and dandy, but once that level of profit is determined, then what's going to stop them from taking 6 minutes to 7,
right,
to 8, to 9, to 10?
No. Well,
that's another story. That's another podcast.
That's another podcast. And thank goodness you can record it and skip ahead. Now, this question is about the future. What sort of future projects or clients are you looking for? And then the second half of that is, what do you think the Asian studios are looking for?
I'll start with the second one. So again, I come from show business, much more the business than this show. But I have met, numerous creators and this and that. And I think one universal thing of all of them is they want the widest audience to see their stuff.
Right.
And I think, to a large extent, they also get the most satisfaction is when people who are not from the typical tent come see their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when we've done it a few times now, but when we've done these Asian film festivals, quite frankly, what people are craving is, people who don't look and think like them to come see their stuff and appreciate it.
Good. So,
we did this film festival for Taiwan last fall. We picked this movie. It was called Man in Love. It was Taiwan's biggest local language hit in years. It was actually outperforming Hollywood movies in Taiwan. This is before they kind of shut down, so they were almost at full capacity. I saw the movie, and I'm not, again, my history in Asia is mostly Japan. I'm not Taiwanese, obviously, but I simply enjoyed the movie. It was a good story, and when I saw the movie, I thought, when I first saw this, I thought, you could take this concept and you could take out the Taiwanese protagonist and, make it out of New York, and he's a mobster, and you could put in an Italian mobster, right?
Right.
So the story was ubiquitous. You kind of, plug and play all over the world. When I saw it, I liked it. But then when I actually found out later on, it was actually a remake of a Korean movie, a fairly close remake. And I believe it's also being rated, I think it's in Thailand. But anyway, I think from creators' perspective, they really enjoy, audiences, again, that don't look like them, that not the content, but you could say like the reverse, the diverse audience appreciating their art. I think they really enjoy and get a kick out of. So that's, one thing that I'm kind of banking on the rest of my career on is, kind of not trading, but creating this, what's called, transnational audience around the world where people can see, different stuff. It doesn't always work. I think, probably in general, the less deep you go into a culture, probably the easier it travels in general, but that rule can be broken. But I think that's very interesting. And with this, the internet and, these global platforms, it's much easier to do this. I think that's, one thing that I would like to do going forward. Well, actually, that I am doing going forward, quite frankly.
So when you say what you're going to be doing, what you are doing,
yes,
what you are doing, is it creating content kind of with an Asian elements, or is it American content that is supposed to go global, or is it retail products? Or explain that to me.
Sure. Well, again, I'm in business, so opportunity knocks. I'll listen.
Yeah.
If I'll take the middle one. I don't, American content. Again, if I had a client, absolutely, I'd help them try to sell their wares all over the world. I mean, why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily need any extra help, right? I mean, Western movies have been all over the world for 100 years,
right?
So, again, to help Warner Brothers sell the next version of Harry Potter. Nothing innovative about that, but it's fun, and if it pays the bills, why not? More interesting to me, quite frankly, would be the first one. Again, I have a long history in Asia, so I have lots of friends there and whatever. So that's kind of where my heart lies, but then also my Rolodex.
Right.
So that kind of becomes easier to me. And then the third piece, you mentioned retail. What's interesting about retail and how it kind of relates to entertainment is, things are all blending together in this, so-called attention economy. And, the one big piece over the last 4 or 5 years is this thing called direct to consumer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where the studios were trying to, kind of skip the middleman and go direct to consumer. Well, if you've ever worked for a retailer, I mean, they're laser focused on consumers, right? Like, Walmart will sit in a Walmart meeting. You're talking about what are consumers like? What are the customers doing?
Right.
They're laser focused on that. So I can, bring that perspective to, clients, on the entertainment side. And then, kind of the broader picture is, what pays for the bills, right?
Mm.
And, if you know the entertainment model, there's all these windows, of a different IP that the product goes through, and depending on the project, where the actual break-even point is could be very interesting. I mean, a very rough one was always, okay, a movie would be lucky to break even in the theater, but then once it gets into the home entertainment, the DVD sales, go, then that's when the money comes rolling in, right?
Right.
So that was very important. Now that model is really blurred now with the kind of entry of these tech players into Hollywood. Amazon buying MGM for $9 billion, and seemingly they don't care, because as long as you keep eyeballs on the Amazon website, you can sell more shoes. So it's entertainment really becomes just a loss leader for the Prime subscription consumer base. So things are like really changing. But again, using entertainment to attract eyeballs to sell something, there's nothing new in that, right? So,
Right.
Unless you're going to take a movie, you stick it in a movie theater, and all the consumers are going to pay, $85 to, pay back for the movie, and to, give whoever made it a little bit of profit, which is not coming. There's always been a retail aspect to entertainment. So I think, kind of bridging those two worlds, I can bring a kind of a fresh perspective to things, for my clients.
Okay. Well, here is a trick question. What question did I not ask you that I should have?
Well, then we could have probably talked a little bit more about the roots and the potential of a transnational distribution.
You want to give us your
Sure.
opinion? Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think everybody knows Squid Game, and everybody knows Squid Game, and a lot of people know Money Heist.
Right.
So actually, I wrote a paper about foreign content ascendancy, and I started the concept. The concept of the paper actually began years ago. I've been thinking about it for a long time, but I actually put pen to paper in September of this year. And in September this year, Money Heist, for a very short period of time, that the Spanish language TV show was, let's say, arguably the most popular TV show in the world for kind of a short period of time. And that was in September. And that's when I first started writing this paper. Then at the end of September, Ted Sarandos dropped this little tidbit, I think, at the Code conference, about how there's this TV show called Squid Game, and it may be our most popular. 3 weeks later, nobody could, Squid Game was, the on everybody's lips, right? Talking about it, and we all know that story. But what is interesting to me is when something becomes sticky or a movement becomes sticky, and that's kind of what I'm pursuing now. And I believe transnational distribution is sticky. An example is, and I don't know if you know this, but Money Heist, the Spanish language show, is being remade in Korean.
Yeah, Kim Hong-soon, right? Is directing it. Right.
So what is interesting is, quite frankly, how Hollywood is being skipped, right? Like the entertainment business is hub and spoke, right? Like Hollywood was a center. They called Hollywood in New York. They called the shots and everything, from the hinterlands would come into LA and decisions were made, and then it may get pushed another direction. But now, for a number of reasons, it's kind of being skipped, right? And what's the guy's name? I just dropped it. I think it's Greg Peters, the guy from Netflix. He may have said this in reverse. I'm not sure if he was so prescient when he said it originally, but 5% of the world speaks English, 95% doesn't. So, what happens going forward? Does everything need to emanate out of Hollywood? Can Hollywood be skipped? Does everything need to be in English? I don't think it does. Again, the proof's in the pudding. We will see, but we're already seeing the roots of it now. So I think that's rather important that people recognize that, and I think those who are on the forefront, you will get the most of the benefit. So I think that's very interesting, and related to that, kind of what I'm speaking about next month in Las Vegas is, what's the potential of foreign language stuff growing in the U.S.? Well, I think it's fantastic. One, because the roots are there and you can see it. And I did a survey last summer with a client of mine, and we were asking questions of American consumers, what they think of foreign content and this kind of thing. Not surprisingly, younger, non-white, more wealthy, urban people had a much greater affinity to foreign content than others. Right?
Yeah.
Again, not surprising. Hispanics were the highest, followed by Asian Americans, followed by African Americans, then followed by white. Okay. But where's the population going? The U.S. Census just came out, right? It came out in September last year. Well, the U.S. is going to be a majority non-white population by, I think, 2050, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if America looks more and more like the world, being non-white, and non-white people have a greater affinity for foreign content in the United States, it's not hard to do the math and see the potential of others, other Americans at least, opening their eyes and wallets to foreign stuff, and therefore I think it's sticky.
Is that true? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, so there's two things going on, right? Like Hollywood's being skipped, entertainment's the entertainment business is now going to start being skipped, I think, more and more by Hollywood. And then number two, the U.S. has become also more interested in, foreign stuff. So Hollywood better take notice.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the old way of business, I think, is it's definitely changing, not in the ways that a lot of people see.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Americans are becoming more open-minded towards foreign content. Do you think that is true for countries, especially countries in Asia, that they are open to foreign content?
Absolutely, yes. And I would say that foreign content doesn't necessarily have to be from the U.S., right?
No.
So, box office has always kind of been for better or worse, the barometer of the entertainment business. I did this analysis a couple of years ago. This is actually what got into the Nikkei. And this is when the Chinese box office was like growing and growing and growing, right? And, at the time, people were saying, oh, the Chinese, this was the headline. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but the Chinese entertainment business will overtake the U.S. by, 2022, because the U.S. box office is 11 billion with, 30,000 screens, and the Chinese box office will be 14 billion with 55,000 screens by, whatever the date was. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. But, that's just talking about people, going to the movie and spending their money, buying a ticket. So the question becomes, what are they watching? Right. So, I did some analysis, and at the time, very roughly, I think this was 2018, very roughly, the US box office was about 37% of the global box, and China was about 30. But I did some analysis and I went a level deeper, and I looked at the box office by country of origin.
Right.
Meaning, okay, Chinese people are spending, let's say, $10 billion at the box office, but they're still watching Avengers. They're still watching Harry Potter, right?
Uh-huh.
And the reverse at the time was not yet true. I mean, nobody in the US was watching foreign stuff, right? In the theater. So the numbers came back that the US was 37% of the box office total, but almost double, 68% of the country of origin, right? And why is that? Well, again, because people overseas are watching foreign stuff, right? People in Germany are watching Harry Potter. People in Japan are watching Harry Potter. People in China are watching Harry Potter. But people in the US are not watching, Wolf of Wall Street 2. They're not watching these movies. That's in the movie space. But, I think it's kind of, it was at the time indicative of, where the money goes. But what's changed now is the pandemic really has kind of ripped the heart of the theatrical business. So, how things survive will be, I don't think anybody knows, quite frankly, going forward. But if you look at, what's happened in Asia, in particular with the Japanese market, I know quite well. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing in China. But as these guys gained more confidence, they started putting more money in their productions.
Right.
And, the productions got better. The action, a Japanese action movie or a Chinese action movie, became, more and more closer to, a high budget US action film. People liked it, right?
Right.
They liked seeing, their own country's people, performing well, or, blowing stuff up just as well as, Chuck Norris could do. So the domestic business started growing, in these countries, right? So Japan was, for a number of years, many decades, more money was made from foreign stuff than local stuff at the box office. And this started changing in the late 2000s. And, since then, Japanese productions got a little bit better, which definitely helped them in the local box office. But at the same time, as these domestic productions get better, their appeal overseas, I think, becomes more interesting as well. And we're not yet there. Right, like Wolf Warrior, and I don't know this. I'm sure I'm right. Wolf Warrior, I don't believe performed very well outside of China.
That's exactly true. Exactly.
And but the confidence is gaining, right? And
yes.
the money is there, and the production will follow. And not just that. And I read or heard this the other day, and I have to research it. But I heard that I think it was some in China was like building this whole satellite network in Kenya. And
yes.
giving people cheap satellites, yes. But they're also, filling those satellite feeds with Chinese TV shows, right? Yes. And, Kenyans are now watching Chinese TV. So, as the money comes and the production comes and the money helps, both production and distribution, the eyeballs will follow. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think it could be coming. So that makes it, very interesting, for not just Asia, but all over the world. But, in particular, obviously Korean content is super hot at the moment.
Of course.
Japanese content, in particular anime, has just been a slow growth for decades, and it continues to grow. We haven't really seen it from China yet, but obviously China's got lots of money that they can put behind it. So that could be the next one. But, like even, it could come from Taiwan. It could come from Thailand, who expected Money Heist to be so successful. It could come from Brazil. So the future is kind of open, and I hope that foreign producers and people in the business, they kind of gain some confidence, and that they're not so afraid, to take a lead, because you always have to invest in something, and you never quite know what the answer is going to be. But I think there's enough successes around the world now that people don't need Hollywood's opinion, they don't need Hollywood's gatekeeping and this kind of thing, and audiences will respond.
Exactly. Well, I've heard that too about China's moving into the African market and several of these markets. I think there was I finished the book Red Carpet, China's dominance.
Oh, I read that as
dominance.
Well.
Yes,
that's where I got it from. I got it from that book.
Exactly. My only comment on that is the if you look at the country of origin for a lot of the Chinese blockbusters that made over 500 million or 600 million in China alone, they made peanuts outside of China. Now, maybe they,
correct.
In those cases, maybe it's like, well, we made the money. Okay. But I think the long-term, at least the Chinese government wants to, develop their soft power and get their
Sure.
culture to grow. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, here's a question about you. If you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
If I could give advice to my younger self, it's a good question. I don't know what I would give advice to myself. Like, here I am now, on the back half of my, life, and I have this wonderful job living in LA and working in Hollywood and stuff. I can assure you, growing up in the frozen plains of Canada, I never believed that I'd be here, right? So, to say like, oh, I should have, instead of, studying X, I should have studied film school in, 1990. It wasn't even on my radar, right? And I wish I had done it, right? But look where I am. But how I got here was just, luck and, kind of opportunity. But what I would say as far as advice to your younger self, whatever you're doing, kind of give it your all,
right? Because
you don't know how that's going to benefit you going forward. But if you give it something your all, then the people around you at the time, successful or not successful, they'll know that you gave it your all,
right?
And that'll stick with them. And quite frankly, I used to sell canola oil, which is also known as fat, right? What is oil? It's fat. It's actually fat. The job that I sold after that, I worked for a company called Rubbermaid. And what does Rubbermaid do? They make plastic garbage cans, right?
Right.
So, at the beginning of my business career, I was selling fat, and the job after that, I was selling a garbage can. And now, yesterday or 2 days ago, I was at the Oscar party for Hamaguchi, who won the Oscar for Best International Feature Film. Well, I didn't see that. I wouldn't have seen that coming. Trying to sell canola oil and margarine in China 20 years ago, but it did happen. But it, again, it's a bunch of things that kind of all happened to lead me here. But hopefully that the thing that I did yesterday, impressed enough people to put me in a position to be capitalized on an opportunity I have today. So again, the advice I would have is, your career is not stuck where you are.
Right.
Give it your all, and keep your eyes open. But and then the other one, I've given this advice to other people, and I actually got it from my dad, and I kind of followed it. Was you think about your career, think a couple of moves ahead, right? Like he always described it as golf. Like what is your objective in golf? Your objective in golf is kind of put you in a position to make a birdie putt. And does that mean you need to, hammer your drive 350 yards so you're hitting a 9-iron into the green? Maybe. But if that drive goes errant and you're in the bushes, all right, think about maybe bogeying as opposed to going for it, right? So always think like 2 or 3 moves ahead in your career.
Right.
How I got to Warner Brothers, I was in Japan. We left Japan. I went to MBA here at USC, in LA, and I actually interviewed with Warner Brothers a bunch of times during my MBA. I didn't get the job at the time, but then I took a job with Walmart, and as I mentioned earlier, Walmart, at the time was buying $5 billion a year of DVDs. So,
wow.
After a couple of years at Walmart, I became way more attractive to Warner Brothers than I was the year before, 2 years earlier. And that's actually how I got in. So, to make this jump into your dream job, it doesn't have to be linear,
right?
But you should kind of have a plan.
That is an excellent point, and I love it. You had your own hero's journey. Basically selling garbage cans to the red carpet.
Well, first was fat, right?
Fat to garbage cans.
Fat to garbage cans. There's so many jokes we could make, but we'll avoid it this time.
Okay. Well, in conclusion, would you like to share any social media details or website links or projects that are coming up?
Sure. So the project that I'm very excited about is a film festival that I'll be producing with my wife and some other people that we've done a bunch of film festivals. But it's actually mine. I created a 501c3 for it. It's called Global Stage Hollywood. It's going to be up this fall at the TCL Theater in Hollywood, October 28, 29, 30. But it will be celebrating diverse talent from all over the world. It will be what I said earlier, kind of this transnational concept of film. And we will be, picking up films and projects and talent from all over the world. And we're going to be introducing them to other groups. As an example, I got a very heavy Rolodex in Japan. So obviously we'll have something from Japan there. Right. But I have another friend of mine, and she was in charge of the Lithuanian Film Festival. And, we'll probably pick up a project from her. And the idea is we can expand both groups' tents, right? Like the Japanese would love to have Lithuanians see their stuff, and vice versa.
Right.
We have another guy in the team. He's one of the programmers of the Tirana Film Festival out of Albania. Same thing. So that's one thing we're doing this fall, Global Stage Hollywood. And then the other one is my company. It's called globalconnects.media. And, again, kind of we discuss what I do all through this podcast. But, this is what I do. And I'm, just at the nascent stage of creating this media lab. But, by combining forces with different groups, I think that we can, kind of help expand the tent for a lot of people. So should people have interest, please let me know. And we can discuss.
And should they reach out to that website, Global Connects Media?
The easiest place to reach me would be douglas.montgomery@globalconnects.media. Just a straight, good old email.
Okay, got it. Perfect. And maybe later I can also get the URL for that paper that you wrote. That sounds very interesting. Well, Douglas, this has been very educational and very helpful. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
And we'll see you at the premiere.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. And now for my takeaways, I have 3. Number 1, foreign content ascending in the U.S. It's easier to access foreign content than it was in the past. Shows like Squid Games and Money Heist have boosted the profile and attracted a major audience, and this is growing worldwide. Number 2, skip Hollywood. Hollywood's old way of business is changing. More Americans are watching foreign content, and some studies say the U.S. will be a majority non-white country by 2050. So, Hollywood should do the math. More Americans are opening their eyes and wallets to foreign content, and this also is a growing trend worldwide. Number 3, from garbage cans to Oscar parties. Douglas's advice to his younger self, and by extension, all of you, was to always give it your all. He started out in business selling canola oil, which is fat, and then later did a retail stint with a company called Rubbermaid, who makes garbage cans. A couple of days before the interview, he attended the Oscar party for Best International Feature Film winner Drive My Car. Things you did yesterday will hopefully impress enough people to put you in the position to capitalize on the opportunity you have today. So think about your career a couple of moves ahead, like golf. Your objective in golf is to put you in the position to make a birdie putt. Think 2 to 3 moves ahead. To make the jump into your dream job doesn't have to be linear, but have a plan. Well, that's the show, and thank you for listening. And stay tuned for our grand opening for the Asia list. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate your support. Help us out by rating this show and sharing it on your social channels. The more we grow the community, the more we can collaborate. And I'll see you at the premiere. Bye. 一会儿见.